Hi, I'm Snez, personal trainer, healthy lifestyle coach, and your guide to feeling your best. This podcast is a segment from my weekly radio show, Wellbeing Wednesdays, broadcast live on 88.6 Plenty Valley FM. It's all about sharing real, practical tips to help you move more, eat better, and live healthier without the overwhelm. Let's dive in, shall we? I am super excited to welcome a return guest to Wellbeing Wednesdays, and that's Dr. Marie Anderson, a clinical and health psychologist with a deep passion for emotional wellbeing and holistic health. Marie brings a wealth of knowledge and experience, having spent decades helping people break free from limiting beliefs, develop resilience, and create a more meaningful and balanced life. Her journey into psychology wasn't a straight path. She overcame her own self-doubt to pursue her dreams, earning her doctorate in health psychology and becoming a leading expert in behavioural change and emotional wellness. Welcome back, Marie.
How you going, Snez?
Good. How are you going?
Yeah, good. A bit of wet hair at the moment because I got caught in the rain.
I did hear that complaint. I know. It's just changed, hasn't it? And what a welcome bit of rain.
Well, we do need some rain, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Do you have that thing where you avoid rain at all costs because your hair goes frizzy and curly?
My hair goes very frizzy.
Okay, so I get it. I can see why you were like trying to hide under the lip of the door before I opened up here.
Yeah.
But today, Marie, I am so glad to have you back because we're talking about a topic that feels really especially relevant right now. And I've noticed something lately in my life, in my conversations with my members, my friends, family, even my kids. And this is this unspoken pressure that we put upon ourselves that we should be feeling positive and we should be feeling happy and okay all the time. And it's like if we're not feeling positive, productive or upbeat, we immediately think that there's something wrong or, you know, that we're failing or that we're not good enough or something like that. So we are here today to unpack that because not every day has to be a good day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Mm.
And where are we?
Well,
that was a good lead-in.
Not every day is a good day. We naturally feel happy, and that's a natural state to be in, but it's not a natural state to be in every day. So we can explain this from a psychological perspective.
That was going to be my question.
Yeah. So from a psychological perspective, one of the main things that's going on that's having us sometimes, you know, not feel so good on a day is we've got this negativity bias. So what that means is that the way we're wired up is that we look at the world in a way as if we're looking out for something wrong to happen, right? So it's part of our survival mechanism. And
so looking for dangers.
Yeah, so it's looking for dangers. So it's looking out for, is there a way that something bad's going to happen that might compromise my well-being, my health, you know, my social standing.
So that's a natural way of being.
It is one of our natural ways of being, absolutely. So we can call it a negative filter, you know, or a negative bias. And it's, you know, in the olden days, in the hunter-gatherer days, it was pretty straightforward. We're looking out for enemies or we're looking out for, you know, the saber-toothed tiger who's going to eat us. And so we weren't in it every day or every moment of the day. But in our modern world, there's a lot of dangers. I mean, being late for work is perceived as a danger.
Yeah.
Right. So there's that negativity bias. There's the expectations that we have that may not come to fruition. So we might wake up in the morning and say, I want the day to look this way.
Like this, yeah, because we plan everything and we structure everything.
Particularly if you're a perfectionist, right?
Yeah.
So if you have expectations that the day's going to look a certain way or that, you know, a meeting's going to go a certain way or some interaction with a person, you know, might end up with a particular outcome and then it doesn't come out that way, then we're going to be disappointed. So because the reality of the situation didn't meet our expectations. So depending on how we manage our expectations, we can be left feeling a little bit upset about it.
And that's interesting because you're sort of describing maybe a meeting not going the way that it should, but that could be even something as basic as expecting, which is fair and valid, that your kids are going to have their shoes on and be dressed on time to get out the door so that you can actually arrive to work on time.
Gee, I remember those days.
Yeah.
And so I can appreciate for sure when I have clients come in and saying, I need help with my frustration management because I'm getting frustrated at the kids all the time because I'm always telling them to put their shoes on or fix their bed or, have their breakfast. So absolutely the expectations that we have, if they don't turn out the way we want them, can leave us feel not so good.
And so there seems to be this underlying belief that if we're not feeling positive as well, that there's something wrong with us. And where does that pressure, like sort of knowing that our bodies intuitively are looking for the risks, where does this feeling come from, this pressure to always be happy come from?
Yeah. Look, I guess from a certain point of view, it's the unfortunate things, it's the expectations of our society. In our society, we have this sense that, we've always got to be happy, and the way that our social aspects are designed these days, like if we think of social media in particular, it's all designed for bursts of gratification.
Yeah.
Right? So it's those hits of dopamine. And so that's one big thing. So that's part of our cultural conditioning. In our Western culture, happiness is really seen as a sign of success. It's not just an emotion that we feel in a moment and then we feel a different emotion another moment, right? So if you look at social media, there's a lot out there about trying to match yourself to all these people who buy a certain product and, they're happy. So there's the part of the pressure is that we want to be able to compare ourselves to those people. And there is a theory, the social comparison theory, that does suggest that part of who we are as human beings is we compare ourselves to other people as part of our connection, with others. But today, it's been monetized. So people are making lots of money from it.
So there's an underlying push that's not normal and natural.
Yeah, absolutely. Big push. There's also those childhood experiences that we have, depending on how emotion is seen in family. Are you allowed to have emotion? Are you not allowed to have emotion? And that can influence that pressure when we grow up as well as adults. We might have,
as in that we were only allowed to express ourselves if we were happy and not anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And there's certain cultures where parents, I guess, want the best for their children, and most people do, and they might discourage feeling bad. So if you start to express feeling bad, they might change the subject, or they might give them a lollipop, or they might do something to put a smile on their face.
Yeah.
I mean, we do that with babies as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a quick question off to the side though. Is it a goal that we should be happy all the time? Is that something that's even realistic to achieve? Like, is that our sense of, we should be, like, even if we're not seeing it from social media, if we're not comparing ourselves, is that even something that's natural to try to achieve?
Look, it's an interesting question because I think that the way we're wired up is that if we feel happy, then that produces healing protein.
Okay, so the goal is that.
So I guess from a certain point of view, as much as it's our natural instinct to have the negative bias, we also have this instinct to be happy and content so that we can be healed, right? So and that, because as soon as we go into negativity, that's going to produce a lot of toxic proteins, and that could lead to disease. So you can see that from a Mother Nature's perspective, the reason why biologically too we might want to be geared towards being happy.
Okay, so what I can hear you saying then, it's better for us, but we really shouldn't be feeling bad if we don't exist in that state.
Absolutely not.
24/7.
No, not at all. Look, I often say to clients that happiness is overrated because trying to get moments of happiness every moment of the day can be really quite exhausting. So what we want to aim for is fulfillment. So fulfillment suggests that our lifestyle is designed in a way that it's working for us, but it doesn't mean we have to be happy about being late or, being early for work or being unhappy for being late for work. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So rather than looking for moments of happiness, which is kind of what we're doing, look for general fulfillment? Are you in the right relationship? Are you, managing your work in a way that gives you joy?
Yeah, and what you said just before, which I think is really valid and important, if people missed it, I'm going to bring it back up again, is you said just have a look at if things are working for you. So it was working for you, and that sort of experience of blissful joy, happiness, that's not always going to be the two things, is it? Because some things can just work for us and they're good for us. Like, say, for example, work for somebody might work for them because it sits within the hours that allows them to pick up kids or allows them to do other activities, or it gives them the amount of money that they need. They're probably not hugely, blissfully happy there every day. So that's really important. I think that's an important distinction as well, that making sure that things will come from the perspective that things are working for us in our lives rather than that everything should be making us feel happy.
Yeah, and that's a really, really good point. And I think that we don't talk about that enough in our society, is that we feel that happiness, it means that we've got a smile on our face all the time. But it doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means that our lives is on track and there's a few bumps along the way.
Yeah. And even like before, you mentioned about the situation with the kids. And I know that I think I'm pretty good with this, but I know that there are times where I just don't want to see them upset. But and I think would you say that would be detrimental to trying to take everything away from them, to move the world around them, to make them feel happy? Is that something that if there's parents out there like me that feel a little bit of that? Although as they're getting older, and I think even when they were younger, I didn't mind them being in a bit of discomfort and frustration or unhappiness. Like what would you say to a parent listening that feels they have to remove anything that makes this kid unhappy?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a really, really deep question. You're always good at asking the deep questions. It's a good one. And what makes me think about that for myself is I'm going to be a first-time grandmother soon, and of course...
this will be testing for you then.
This will be a real test, yeah absolutely, because, I know all the grandparents out there are probably easier with their grandchildren than they were with their own children,
absolutely.
Right? But I think the important part of this question is we need to be mindful about helping our children regulate their emotions.
Yeah.
And if we're always trying to take away the bad stuff and them feeling bad, they don't actually get to learn to regulate those negative emotions when they're adults. And that's really important in order to be able to work well in our society when you're out there working with different people, right? So regulating emotions is really important. So I think we've got to find that balance with our children to help them learn that feeling bad is actually okay. If something bad happens, if a pet dies, then it's okay to grieve and it's okay to cry. There's nothing wrong with that. And if we're going to the theme park and we're having a fantastic day, then, the whole day is all about joy and happiness. So, and all in between. And we do want to, of course, support our kids if they're angry or frustrated or any of those emotions that can actually get everyone into trouble, help them work through them and talk through them so that they can change the way that they're looking at the situation, and then they'll be left with those strategies as they grow older. And you want to get them when they're little because otherwise they're going to be challenging teenagers.
Yeah. And I think that definitely is another show, and I would love to unpack that because I think we could really get some good advice from you. Now, Dr. Marie, we are talking about having down days and that not every day has to be a good day. And we've sort of unpacked the idea that a range of emotions are very healthy to have on a daily basis. But my next question to you is that there is definitely a difference between a down day and a more serious mental health issue, and how do we identify that within ourselves?
Yeah. Look, this is a really good question, definitely worth unpacking. I guess a down day, the simple answer is that a down day is a normal part of our everyday human experience, whereas a more serious mental health issue, it might be a diagnosable condition like depression, anxiety or other mental health condition. Probably I was looking for kind of like a little formula, like my formulas, a way to identify differences. And according to the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, big book, if we're looking at measuring down days and serious mental health conditions according to duration, so how long they last.
Okay, yep.
Their severity, so how serious it feels, the cluster of symptoms, so what kind of symptoms and the types of symptoms that might be together depending on the condition, and functionality, so how well functioning is the person. So a down day might sound a bit like, I don't feel like myself today, or I feel a bit weird, maybe a bit moody, I need some space to reset. So the duration is really short term, maybe a few hours, a couple of days, not long. Severity is not that bad, on a scale of 0 to 10, it would be under 5. Symptoms, there might only be a couple, sleep deprivation or a little bit fatigued. And in terms of functional impairment, even if you don't feel like going to work, you can get up and go.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
You might sort of not feel like but you can still do it. Whereas a more serious day, people say things like, I feel burnt out.
Yeah.
They might say there's something wrong with me. I feel like I'm a burden to people. I feel like I'm never going to feel good again is really deep if someone says something like that. So the duration will be longer, a couple of weeks or more.
Yeah, wow.
Severity might be a score of over 5 if we're looking at that score of 0 to 10. The symptoms, you'll have quite a few. So maybe you're not sleeping well, you're not eating well, you're feeling fatigued, feeling really lackluster. So there's quite a number. Your concentration's not good. And typically your low self-esteem isn't good either. And functionally, sometimes people can't even get out of bed. So I think if we use those, the duration, severity, the symptom clusters and functionality, it's a good way of kind of determining.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was very interesting because it just helps you define it within yourself and just sort of say, oh, actually mine is just a down day, or I actually need a bit of help with this. Yeah. So I think that's a really good way to look at it with those points. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. And so once we identify that, so if there's people out there listening who are having one of those low days right now, or the down days, so we're not diving more into the mental health issue side of it, but if you are just having a down day, a low day, and you can't really connect it to anything in particular, you're just having just a low day, what's the first thing that they can do to just meet themselves where they are rather than making themselves wrong about it? Like, how do we do that? Yeah.
Look, I think keep it really simple, and the first thing is don't judge it. Like you might say to yourself, I'm kind of feeling a bit weird today, and what we tend to do is look for what's wrong.
Oh, to attach it to something.
Yeah, so don't judge it. Just sort of accept it for what it is. And
oh, that's really good. Sorry.
That's all right.
That's really good, because otherwise you can go, oh, my husband's annoying me. You can make it about other things other than just going, oh, it's just one of those things that happens.
That's right, one of those things. If you can name the emotion, then the science tells us that by naming it, it can actually calm the amygdala, which is the reactive part of the brain when we're feeling stress. So naming the emotion, if you say to yourself, well, I'm actually feeling a bit angry at the moment, or I'm feeling a bit frustrated at the moment, just naming it and just accepting it in that moment, and don't judge it, and just it will pass. Yeah. If it's just a down moment, it will pass. Yep. So just accepting it in that moment, don't judge it, and name it. Just acknowledge it. Like if we acknowledge how we're feeling, then it's kind of like giving ourselves a pat on the back.
Yeah, yeah. And so I'm going to go over to the next question then. So we were talking about ways that we can support ourselves, and I am going to go into the first question before we need to take another break. But so if we're talking about the idea of ways to help ourselves, you mentioned last time when we were talking about this topic about a mental health toolkit. And what does that actually mean? What would a mental health toolkit be? I'm really intrigued to know what would be included in this toolkit.
I love the idea of a mental health toolkit, and it could be a collection of strategies, habits, resources. And I guess if we think about it, we have first aid kits, don't we? So we have first aid kits
for our bodies.
For our bodies to treat minor physical injuries. So why not have a first aid kit, if you like, for a mental health toolkit? And we could add some coping skills, some daily habits, some crisis tools. Support networks is a good one. Quotes and affirmations.
So when you say support networks, that's just your awareness of who you can call in that moment.
Well, it can be people that you know.
Yeah.
So it could be the online services, it could be phone numbers, the helplines, it could be a whole lot of networks, it could be a neighbour, it could be anything really. So anywhere that you know you can get support or supports that are available out there in the world, whether it's by phone or whether it's online.
And what other elements did you mention just in that
coping
toolkit?
Coping schools.
Oh, we all need a coping school. We definitely need that.
Well, maybe we need to develop a school so that we can learn how to cope, right?
Yes.
Coping skills. Coping skills, daily habits. You know, daily habits could be...
Yeah, give us an idea. That's why I wanted you to unpack some of these for me.
Daily habits could be like, for me, I know I get up early and one of the first things I do is I put my meditation tape on and I sit for 10 minutes with my lead light mask and I meditate. So this is before I do anything. So I put the kettle on, but then before I do any of that. So I meditate. So that's part of my daily routine. And then I'll do maybe an hour worth of exercise, stretching, movement of some sort. And, have my cup of tea and definitely fix the bed. So kind of like if I've fixed the bed that much over the years that if I don't fix that bed, it feels like it's off.
Yeah. And so you're sort of looking at routines that you probably would be doing when you're not having a down day and just kind of blending back into those. And I know for me, when I'm feeling particularly stressed or like I'm having one of those down days, I did an interview with someone a little while ago. It was about hygge, which is a Swedish form of relaxation and way of living. It's a really beautiful concept. And she was talking about tea lights. She was all about the tea lights.
Really?
And I know that if I'm feeling a bit off, like I just light the tea light and I just feel that's kind of that would be my toolkit. And it's just that light there. It's the symbol of light in that moment, but it's just this, that sort of stillness, that peacefulness, and I will just put it next to me, whether it be usually on the kitchen bench. That's where it goes nuts for me, and there's everything happening at the one time, trying to get to parenting and life, and I just find that just having that little candle there that I can just light, just the process of just lighting that just makes me feel, it's like, I don't know. It just does something that I just feel a bit more aware.
And you can even get those little lights that you don't light up. They're got a battery.
Yeah.
My mum's got them all over her house.
Oh.
So,
and then you can just, wherever you are.
So you don't have to, there's no flame.
Yeah.
So you can be assured that, if you've got an elderly parent who you're worried about open flames, they're perfect. And so she feels at ease when she puts them on.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got processes, we've got things that we can do, as you said, like routines or playing some music or the meditation. What other things could we do that we could include in this toolkit?
Well, I have got lots of different
ideas.
Thanks for that. That we can put in the toolkit, absolutely. And I think the one thing that I definitely recommend often to people is movement, so physical movement, and I know that you would appreciate this one. Right?
Yeah.
So physical movement, because that's like if the pharmaceutical companies could bottle physical movement and exercise, that's probably, pretty much all they need.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of health benefits from that. So physical movement could be like walking the dog.
Yeah.
It could be yoga. Just simply stretching, dancing, gardening, which is a good one because it means you're outdoors as well and you're getting light. Tai Chi, riding a bike, swimming.
And it doesn't have to be what I know about exercise. It doesn't have to be like an hour. It can be even 4 minutes. Like there's this great technique that I absolutely love, and we were teaching this in lockdown, is where if you are having one of those sort of frustrating days, you just literally grab a pillow and you set a timer for 20 seconds and you're just like whacking that pillow against the couch. And it's like an exercise. It's like a kettlebell swing, I guess. And then you rest for 10 seconds and you go again. And even if you did that for 2 minutes, it just elevates the heart rate enough to elicit the endorphin response and just complete that stress cycle. So
Absolutely. And if the pillow breaks, then you've got more physical movement because then you've got to clean up.
I have Dr. Marie Anderson, clinical and health psychologist, and we are talking about a mental health toolkit for those days that we feel a little bit low. And Marie, just a quick question. Is this something that everybody should have or be familiar with what could be in their toolkit, even if they don't identify with someone that actually struggles with mental health?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really great question for us to think about, because how many of us have first aid kits that we don't ever expect to use, right? We've all got first aid kits and we're just sitting there, and I look at mine very often and think, do I need to replace anything? Does it go out of date, right? Because we very rarely use them. And I think about it like insurance. How much money do we pay in insurance? And we never hope to have to use it, right? Car insurance and home insurance and business insurance and so forth. We never hope to use it, but we willingly, might not be happy about paying all that money, but we willingly do because it is, protection, isn't it? It's preventative. So I think if we think of a mental health toolkit as preventative, and it's just reassurance, just having it there is reassurance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the thing is, just wanted to unpack just a few helpful tools or strategies someone could start with when they're putting together. So we've talked about some of the things we could include, but let's just unpack some other tools or strategies that could help them with their down days.
Yeah, sure. One of the things you were saying before was just some simple things, and the research says, or there are some studies that says that even standing up straight and pulling your shoulders back can just change your mood.
The posture,
Absolutely. Like, I just did it then, just sat up straight, pulled my shoulders back, and already I feel better.
Yeah, alert.
So there's something about just a simple movement can do that. One of my favourites that I recommend to clients is journalising. So on the first session, usually I've got some journals and I offer one to new clients if they want to take one, so that they can bring to sessions and write notes, but also so that they can write how they're feeling. So having a nice funky journal that, anytime you feel like writing, or maybe on a regular basis, you could do it on a daily basis or, weekly basis, or just when you feel like it, writing down how you're feeling is a great tool to have in your kit. And you can be thinking about, reflecting on, how you're feeling about this moment, and then you can change the way that you're feeling as well. So reframing it, and you'll find that you'll respond a lot better.
And that does come out when you journal, doesn't it? Because there's that process of journaling that brings clarity to what sometimes can feel quite unreasonable, like or when it is something unreasonable in our minds. It's not until we download it and put it into writing that you go, oh, that's actually probably not really how I feel.
No, and it's really interesting the number of times I've done a journal over the years and then gone back and looked at it like a few days later and thought, what the hell? What's that stuff that was in my head?
Well, yeah, what headspace was I in at that time?
That's right. And it feels,
big and real
in your head. But as soon as you put it down on paper, you can see that, because if it sounds a bit ridiculous, then that's why it feels, so heavy in your head, right? Because even the brain thinks it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, journalising is definitely one of my favourite things that I recommend to people, and that would put a journal in a kit. I really like the idea of any activity that activates our senses. So touch, for example, you could have a heat pack.
Yep.
And so it doesn't have to be, I like heat pack, but some people might like cold pack.
Yep.
So I like a heat pack. You could have a weighted blanket. Now they're very, very popular these days. Or I prefer a nice fluffy, soft blanket that you could have a bath. So that's a really nice sensual experience. A stress ball that you can use to massage. I mean, if you've got a dog, there'll be plenty of balls around.
Yeah. Or even just the dog, a big cuddle of the dog. That was one thing that there was a couple of down days in lockdown that I found myself just with my arms draped around.
Absolutely.
Around my pup, just going, oh, you know.
Barefoot in the garden. Like if you've got, grass,
Yeah.
then that's a lovely and soft on your feet. So hearing, so that will be music, guided meditation, even just some running water. And I don't mean turn on the tap, but you could just go online and find
some sort of a YouTube video.
That's right, on running water, and any other soothing sounds. So that would be activating your hearing. Sight, so bird watching. Have you ever sat and just watched birds?
Yes. Look, I'm very, very lucky to be on a large property where we have so much bird life, and the yellow-tailed black cockatoos are my absolute favourite because they're so graceful in their flight path. They're very different to the white cockatoos because they're just quite erratic and nuts. But the yellow-tails black cockatoos are just so graceful in their flight path. And yes, I have watched them, and it is so, so calming.
It really is. And you might have seen the odd sunset, just watching the sun go up or sun come down. That's really fantastic. I love to do that when we're away particularly.
Yeah.
Looking at art. It's not something we really kind of talk about.
Think to do,
but that can be really interesting, trying to work out art. So anything that's visual, smell. I think we do a bit of this with the aromatherapy.
Yeah.
Right? We do a bit of that. Flowers, we can have flowers in the house. Incense, so that's another thing. Cooking, so all the smells of cooking. I love cooking smells. And then there's taste, of course. So a herbal tea, simple as that. Make a little favourite meal or something sweet that you can just savour in that moment, right? So it can just break the moment that you're in. And a bunch of other miscellaneous activities, hobbies, right? Think of a hobby.
You're just retreating into some sort of a craft or gardening or anything.
Anything that you call a hobby. Playing a musical instrument. So even if you are not musical like me, there's plenty of guitars in my house. But just picking one up and strumming it, even if it doesn't make sense musically, can just be calming, right?
Yeah.
So think about if you've ever thought of doing a musical instrument, that now's the time to learn one. Reading a book, of course, doing a puzzle can really take you well away, right? Particularly if you're doing, a 1,000-piece puzzle. Playing a board game, watching a funny show, so laughing. Laughing is really the best medicine. Right? So if we can do a lot of laughing, crying.
No, just cry it out.
Yes,
this is the one that I'm a big fan of. I'm a big fan of just get it out of your system and just feel so much better.
Absolutely. Love the idea of crying. I will often watch a movie just because I know it's going to be And we know that, when we cry, a lot of toxic hormones come out. So it is getting the toxins out of our system. There's drawing. I mean, that's become a popular thing, right? Therapy books. So drawing and colouring in by numbers. Of course, ringing a friend, spending time with someone that you care about. Plenty of podcasts around that, I've got a podcast going all the time.
Yeah.
The deep breathing, that's, an obvious one that we talk about a lot. Doing an act of kindness.
Yep.
It really leaves you feeling
Bringing a
good.
smile on somebody else's face when you're not feeling the best.
Absolutely. So that's a good one. So volunteering, you mentioned about, hanging out with a pet. If you don't have a pet, hang out with someone else's pet.
Yeah.
Babysit.
Just go and visit.
Babysit.
Or there's the Cat Protection Society. You can just go and just have a cuddle with them. Absolutely. Yeah. But there is so many things there that can make up a toolkit. And I just love the way that you've given us such a variation and a real reminder, because as you were saying some of those things, I was like, I used to do that. And that actually felt really good. And I think when we get so caught up in our lives, these basic actions, we forget to take them. But I've got one more question because I'm just looking at the time, and time just flies when we're hanging out together in this studio. But the last thing I'm going to ask you, and we've got 5 minutes before we need to head into the news, but what's one gentle message you'd want to leave someone who is in the middle of a really tough day today?
I guess I mentioned earlier that naming the emotion is a good first step. So really get in touch with naming your emotion. And once you label it, think of one little small thing that you can put into action right now, because the science tells us that if we are in action or take small actions, it can really break mood cycles.
Yep.
So a lot of those pointers that I indicated before in terms of the toolkit, that plenty of those could be actions that you could take in that moment.
And instantly. That doesn't take too much effort.
And then cut yourself some slack and do something that's going to definitely put a smile on your face, that you definitely know that is you're going to smile.
And how about in those moments where we just want to stay down?
Who wants to stay down?
Because there's sometimes where I'm just like, you know what, I don't want to help myself right now. I just want to stew in this for a bit longer.
Well, you know what?
Is that a thing? Or is that just me?
No, that actually is a thing, actually. I remember when I was studying many decades ago, we did talk about just sitting in with where you're at and just accepting that and giving yourself permission to, be angry, or giving yourself permission to be frustrated. And if you give yourself permission just to sit in it and just accept it, there comes a time when it'll just go away or you'll get sick of it.
Yeah. That's why I'm like, I'm done with this now.
That's right. You'll get sick of it. So, I agree that where you could just sit in it, but you're giving yourself permission to sit in it.
Yeah.
Which is different from
feeling
sitting
stuck
in
there
it and feeling stuck.
Yeah. And that's probably another time to identify that we need to get help.
Yeah.
But thank you, Dr. Marie, for coming in today. It's always an absolute joy to hang out with you, and the time just seems to go so quickly. But I think just identifying today that we don't always need to feel 100% happy, and that a range of emotions are something that we should expect to feel every day. And I just love the way that you always bring us back to the fact that it's just an emotion and it will pass. But putting together some of those toolkits, I think, is a great way. You've given us lots of different ways, and I think we just wanted to end on, if we are putting our toolkit together, what are some of the ways that we can do it? Would you do a physical representation, or would you do, I see myself, and we spoke about this in the break, but you sort of described that you probably would put a book
You
or
could have
a
a scrapbook. You could have a scrapbook and, just cut and paste images of the activities so that you could look through the book and go, I feel like doing that. So you could have your physical, like your puzzles, or, obviously you can't put
around in different places,
right. So you could have them set up somewhere else. But if you have a scrapbook, that could be one, or you could have like a box and like a lucky dip. So you could write them all up and then put them in all wrapped up like a lucky dip, and then you pick one out.
Oh, I love that idea. Treating ourselves like, like just the little kids that we are inside. Like, why not do that for ourselves? I used to love that as a kid. And for me, and isn't it different people, different things? Like for me, I think I just want a list that I can go to that in that moment I don't want to think. And I'm like, I'm just going to do that. And I think that's where the lucky dip is probably a great idea, because we don't want to make yet another decision at that time when we may be feeling a little bit like. Thanks for joining me on this segment from Wellbeing Wednesdays, as heard live on 88.6 Plenty Valley FM. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with someone who might find it helpful, and subscribe so you never miss a show. Want to catch the live broadcast? Well, you can tune in Wednesdays from 12 till 2 p.m. on 88.6 Plenty Valley FM, or find my info on Wellbeing Wednesdays with Snez, the Facebook group. Take care, stay healthy, and remember, it's the little choices every day that create big changes. Talk soon.